Chapter 56, That Which Finishes Us. It did not feel like an ending. It felt like arriving somewhere you had never been, but always longed for, the shape of a memory that existed before memory. The forest was no longer recognizable, not as trees, not as stone. It was a pulse now, breathing, waiting, not asking what happens next, but asking, are you ready to know what you've always known? Elle stepped into the center of that knowing, barefoot, bones aching, soul vibrating. Behind her, nothing. No Bastion, no Johannes, only echoes that still lived in her blood. The two who remained, she wasn't alone. They were there, sitting like bookends to the apocalypse. Ravana. Not gods, not demons, just two beings that history had turned into mirrors of its fear. Ravana sat in stillness, one hand on his knee, the other resting near the soil, as if grounding himself to the very roots of consequence. His eyes had seen kingdoms rise, fall, burn, rise again, and still, they held something almost tender now. Basmasura stood, pacing lightly, not out of impatience, but because stillness had always been unnatural to him. His rage was no longer wildfire. It was embers, restrained, glowing, but capable. They both looked at her and said nothing, at first. The girl who carries the end else broke the silence. I don't want to do this. Her voice was dry, quiet, more a confession than a refusal. Basmasura stopped pacing. He looked at her. His voice, when it came, was cracked open by layers of memory. You are not supposed to want it. She looked up, startled. You think we wanted this ending? He continued. You think I came here to die in peace? No, I came here to finish something, to be seen for once beyond the one thing I did wrong. Else blinked. Ravana smiled, but it was the kind of smile you wear at funerals. We've all done things that cannot be undone, he said. But what if we could at least complete them? The final debate. She sank to the ground beside them. You've changed, she whispered, eyes locked with Ravana's. He didn't deny it, only in the ways that matter. And yet, if I chant, her voice broke. You disappear. Basmasura crouched before her now, massive and ragged, but soft in a way that surprised her. We do not disappear, he said. We become what we always were meant to be. Which is, he paused, memory. Not as punishment, but as warning, as possibility. Ravana finally spoke, voice steady, not bitter, only full. You were chosen not because you were good or strong or pure. You were chosen because you are still unfinished. He leaned forward. The chant must be completed by the unfinished. Elsa's lips trembled. But what if I get it wrong? Basmasura nodded slowly, approvingly. Then the world ends imperfectly. Ravana met her gaze, but the attempt will still matter. And so begins the end, she stood. The wind stopped, not stilled, stopped. Time held its breath. Reality leaned forward. The air became listening. Elle stepped into the circle. The final syllables of the invocation began to rise inside her, not as sound, but as inevitability. The first syllable, the sound before sounds, the inhale of the universe. Ravana exhaled slowly, his eyes closed, and in that stillness he whispered, Tell them I was not just the fire. I was the match, and the wind, and the hand that struck the flame in desperation. Else trembled. Nammu, the second syllable, the surrender, the bending of the spine to the weight of something vast. Basmasura knelt, not in worship, in acceptance. Tell them I never asked to destroy, only to be seen before I burned. And then, the final line, Kalagraha. The syllables echoed not in air, but in structure. The sky cracked, the ground sighed. Kalagraha, the hunger of all things left unsaid, rose not in rage, but in relief. It wasn't a creature. It was an ending that had waited too long to be finished. It saw her and bowed. Dissolving without dying, Ravana's form began to blur, not in pain, but like ink returning to water. Let them build temples to memory, not me, he whispered. Let me be the god of finished things. Basmasura smiled through tears that never fell, and let me be the guardian of unmade rage. Their bodies melted into air, into syllables, into stillness. Not dead. Written. After the chant, Else fell to her knees, alone, completely alone, but not afraid. The chant was finished, not silenced, fulfilled. And from far away, through trees that no longer stood in space, but in symbol, came the sound of brothers laughing. Vishnu Maya, Karankuti. Their joy echoed through realities, not because it was over, but because it had finally been done right. Last line spoken only in the soul. There is no closing sentence to a chant like this, only the silence that follows it, and sometimes that silence is the most sacred part. Epilogue: The Rain That Remembered. Else sat alone. The sky had cracked open, not with thunder, but with permission. Rain began to fall softly over the forest that was no longer a forest. Where once there had been blood, ash, curses, and teeth, now there was only water. Clean, silent water, washing down the roots like forgiveness made visible. She did not move. Her body ached in places she didn't know names for. Not from wounds, those were long gone, but from something deeper. A kind of aching that only comes at completions. The kind of stillness one feels not at the end of a song, but the end of the singer. Each droplet landed with reverence. The trees, though twisted and wounded by God, still stood. The stones, though burnt by screams and syllables, still glowed faintly. It felt like the world was bathing itself in Elsa's silence, as if nature too had wept through her. She lay back slowly, letting the rain fall into her eyes, not blinking, letting it carry her. Then a wind came. Not cold, not disruptive, warm, intentional. It brushed her cheek like the back of a familiar hand. She blinked. Another breeze, this time slower, moving through her hair, parting it gently, tucking it back as if by instinct. And then it came again, curling around her wrist, sliding down her arm, resting briefly on her chest. Else inhaled sharply, not from fear, but from the overwhelming intimacy of it. She sat up, eyes wide, searching, but the clearing was empty. Yet everything felt full. And then she knew. It hadn't just been deities watching her. It hadn't just been chants or destinies or veils. Through every silence, through every fire, through every time she had screamed and no one heard, there had been a presence, not divine, maternal, soft, patient, silent as moonlight. She looked into the rain, and though she saw no form, she felt something curl behind her, resting lightly and visibly, as if wrapping around her back like arms that once knew her shape. A whisper passed not through the air, but through her skin. You finished what I could not. Else closed her eyes, her face lifted to the sky, and for the first time since the invocation began, she wept not in terror, not in confusion, but in relief. Somewhere beyond the rain, a flute played. No song, just one long note, held without end. Maybe it was Krishna, maybe it was the wind, maybe it was her mother, finally able to sing again. The world was not healed, but it was washed. The chant had ended. The silence was sacred. And Else, just Else, no chosen one, no bearer of mantras, no vessel for war, just a daughter, sat quietly as the rain told the story to the soil. End of part 1, Chant of the Kalagraha. Let the silence breathe. The echo will return.